Can't miss galley tips for cruising.
Hello and welcome to the Sailing My Magic channel. My name is Duke and I am solo sailing Magic, my 2015 Lagoon catamaran, around the world.
If you have a double sink, you might want to buy a big cutting board and trim it to fit around 1/2 of the sink. Drill a hole in the middle also for ventilation purposes. The cutting board will greatly expand your countertop accessibility, plus it is a cutting board, so it ends up helping quite a bit. Similarly, if you have the right size tray, it can hang on both sides of your companionway and provide extra shelf space or counter space. You have to watch your head going up and down the companionway, but it's great when you're cooking and you just need some place to put stuff for a little bit. Likewise, if you have a sliding window in your galley, then the edge for the sliding window, sometimes you can put a folding shelf there. In other words, a shelf that goes in 2 pieces with a hinge in the middle, and that will give you some extra counter space to put stuff up on while you're cooking. Boat galleys by their nature are very small. You have to learn to use shelves, trays, cutting boards, nets, hooks, all sorts of things to increase your working surfaces. Many boats have grab rails along the ceilings, and you can use those to tie nets and hang certain fruits and vegetables. Now, not all fruits and vegetables do well hanging in the open air like that, but some do well. Onions and bananas tend to do well in the open air nets. Apples don't, just because they get bruised and damaged when they are bashed around. Oranges do well. Thing about bananas is whatever they are close to, they give off a gas that makes everything ripen quicker. So if you put them in the fridge with your other fruits and vegetables, it tends to make them age faster. Don't wash your fruits and vegetables before putting them in the fridge or putting them away. The moisture tends to cause early mold and cause them to deteriorate quicker. Potatoes can be hung, but they need to be in a bag to keep out sunlight. If you have them in any kind of sunlight, they sprout and will go bad quicker. Your pots and pans should fit inside each other to take up as little space as possible. Likewise, your storage plastic containers should nest inside of each other and fit in there completely so that the whole set doesn't take up any more room than the biggest one. In another video, I mentioned that I put breakable stuff from the countertop into one side of the kitchen sink, and the other side I keep open in case I need to wash my hands. For instance, if the anchor chain is coming up muddy from the bottom and I need to prevent the anchor chain from castling, that is stacking on top of itself. You don't want to jam your windlass that way. So I end up having to wash my hands maybe a couple of times just while I'm getting the anchor up. You can buy rolls of light rubberized material to put on your tabletops to keep stuff from sliding around while under passage. Don't let it get wet. They do soak up water or moisture. And the other thing is, you really don't want stuff there when it really goes flying. So that's just a temporary small solution. I also mentioned in prior videos that I do a mold patrol every 1 to 2 weeks. And that's to kill off any mold or bacteria using different disinfectants. I tend to use bleach in a spray bottle, which works really well on fiberglass areas. I also use hydrogen peroxide because it doesn't affect cloth the way bleach does. And I use white vinegar, which is slightly acidic. And the good thing about this, if you keep rotating them around on different surfaces, the bacteria and the mold doesn't have a chance to build up a resistance to it. A pressure cooker cooks food in about half the time of just cooking it on the stove. So that saves you propane or electricity if you have an electric cooktop. But electricity, propane, water are all precious things when you're doing long distance cruising. So you want to use them as little as possible. Many sinks come with a second faucet and a foot pump to pump in salt water so you can rinse off your plates and pots and pans with the salt water, and then finish as a last rinse and wash with fresh water. A stovetop tea kettle is good for heating up some water, and it tends to not slide around as much. They usually have a rougher bottom, but the good part about it is you can put a certain amount of water. Let's say you want 2 cups of coffee. You can put in the amount of water that you need for 2 cups of coffee and not waste any extra water and not waste any extra propane. If you were to put 5 cups of water in there and you're only using 2, it takes a lot more propane. It has to heat longer to heat up that volume. If you have a large solar panel system and lithium batteries, then my favorite is the George Foreman grill. It does use a lot of electricity for a short period of time, but it's an extremely short period of time. The George Foreman grill cooks on the top and the bottom at the same time. So steaks, hamburgers, chicken, everything like that, you can cook it in 3 to 5 minutes. It does well for fish also, but it leaves the grill marks on it. But since electricity is a renewable resource, because you have the solar system, then you're not going to run out like you will propane. You should be aware that most boat drain systems are not like a drain system in a house. You can't run a snake through it to clear out a drain when it gets clogged. They're usually plastic pipe, and they're often have ridges in them that collects food. So you don't want to be putting little bits of food or grease or anything down your drain if you can avoid it. Several aspects of this. Number one, I use a plastic spatula to scrape off bits of food and grease into the trash as much as possible. If it's a lot of liquid grease, I put an old paper towel inside of a tin can and pour the grease in there so it's collected until I'm someplace where I can properly throw it in the trash. And the little bits of food, like something like corn, for example, it's got a hard shell. It's not going to degenerate and fall apart in your kitchen sink for many, many years. You start putting corn and beans and things down your kitchen sink and you're going to have problems. After I've gotten the little bits of food and the grease out of a frying pan, I wipe it off with one paper towel and the lid off with the same paper towel. Throw those in the trash so there's as little as possible going down that kitchen sink. Along the same lines of preserving water, when you wash your hands, you want the faucet to just be trickling out the bare minimum of water. You'd be surprised how well you can wash that way. Beyond the plastic spatula, you also need a couple of good sharp knives. Sharp knives are less likely to slip and cut you because you draw them across something that's hard to cut, like let's say a tomato, and as you draw it across, it'll just cut through it. You need a good sharp paring knife and also a good bread knife. Some of the islands don't have sliced bread. You just buy a big, like homemade loaf, and you have to slice it yourself. So you do want that good bread knife. I see a lot of boats just have a cheap can opener on them, and you really don't want that. I mean, those cheap can openers, eventually they get to where they just won't cut anymore. The gear slips inside. You want a good can opener that's going to last you when you're out in the middle of nowhere. Otherwise, you're going to be trying to open a can with a knife, and that's a good way to cut yourself or have some other disaster. You are going to need all the usual kitchen utensils, a big ladle, big spoons, colander, sifting net, a baking dish. Get all of those things squared away. Storing all of your dry goods properly is very important. Things like pasta, rice, oats, any of the flour, sugar, they don't do well when they're exposed to a lot of humidity, heat, or bugs. Even when it's brand new, you're going to want to double bag your dry goods and put them in your pantry. And then once you do open them, you're going to want to roll them back up, tape them up if there's still some left, tape the bag up, and then double bag it, and then put that double bag item into a locking plastic container. Now, this is to prevent not only bugs getting from the outside in, but bugs getting from the inside of the bag out. Even stuff purchased in the US, you occasionally get a bug in there that's laid some eggs. What I do is I rinse my rice and pasta to see if any bugs float up, because they do float. And you will want to take measures to prevent all bugs, because very often you get into some of these places with the biosecurity issue. If they find bugs on your boat, you're going to pay for a very expensive extermination episode on your boat. You want to put your bread in the refrigerator, and if you're not going to use it for a long time, in your freezer. Both will help the bread stay fresh a lot longer and keep it usable. You may also have bugs try to get in through the canned goods. What they will do is they'll get underneath the label when they're on shore, and they will eat the glue underneath the label and lay eggs in there. So when you put them in your shelf, they have an opportunity to spread all over your boat. The solution to this is to peel the paper label off, scrape as much of the glue off as you can, and don't forget to write the name of the contents of the can on the top of it, because you've just removed the label. I try to use 3-letter abbreviations as much as possible. Just makes it faster to do more cans. But you're going to want to write the abbreviation on a sheet of paper so that it stays consistent from one grocery shopping episode to the next. Large flat polyethylene boxes are great for putting inside your refrigerator, because then you can put stuff in them. The polyethylene allows them to slide very easily, and that way you can reach stuff in the back of your refrigerator without having to take everything off of that shelf, and it greatly speeds up your process when cooking. They also work well for putting in your bilges to keep water away from cans and stuff. Now, salt water in your bilge, if you don't have a perfectly dry bilge, is going to make cans rust. But there's other things you can put in there too. Bottles of wine, jars from pasta sauce, things like that. There's lots of things you can put in there. Ziploc bags of various sizes are really essential. Now, I get the 1-gallon freezer bags, the quart freezer bags, and the sandwich bag sizes. They really help a lot, and you can reuse them on different things. Very often I'll start them off on dry goods, and after they get a little bit older, I'll put them around meat or something that I'm putting in the refrigerator, and it helps everything last longer. Anything that doesn't deteriorate in time is a good thing to stock up. That could be mouthwash, paper towels, toilet paper, mustard, mayonnaise, ketchup. Those things don't need to be refrigerated if they're not open. And you will end up using it. I have 3 different sizes or types of scissors on board. Paper scissors are obviously named for what they do, but I have one pair that has like a serrated edge, and it's good for like deboning chicken, things like that. Also, I've got one that has a built-in feature to open bottles or jars, and it actually does help on occasion. You should have a fire extinguisher in your galley, but in addition to that, you should also have a fire blanket. And the difference is a fire extinguisher, first, if you use it, most of them have powder in them, and the powder makes a huge mess if you do have to use it. But secondly, the powder tends to pack down with the boat bouncing around after a while. So even though it's never been used, you may pick up the fire extinguisher and it doesn't work. The fire blanket, on the other hand, you pull on a couple of straps and it slides out of the package, and you can just throw it on top of your stove or frying pan, whatever's on fire, and does just as good a job as the fire extinguisher with a lot less mess. Fresh milk can be a problem because it goes bad so easily, especially when you have heat and humidity. Even in the fridge, I don't know, it just does. I end up using UHT box milk. That's ultra high temperature. It's pasteurized so it doesn't go bad. It can stay in the box unrefrigerated for about 2 years. So it's a good thing to have. And I just get like a case of it and rotate the stuff around once in a while. And I'm not even using it for cereal. It's just mostly for milk in my coffee. But you do end up going through quite a bit. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already. It's free and it really does help quite a bit. Now it's time for the Sailor's Delight, the Sundowner.